when a guard would stop and talk to you, you used to stand back and you would yell so people could hear what you were saying to that guard as they walked by or within the vicinity.
But he knew what a convict was going to do before they thought of it themselves. He'd just been around that long, and he was tough.
They'd find Sparky in about every conceivable place you could imagine, which we would, of course, dump.
They'd wait until everybody was locked up, and he would open his door and run down to cell 1 and get a bugler can full of Sparky and take it back to his cells.
She had a kind of a hypnotic power. There were a great many wild cats around the penitentiary, and most people couldn't get near them. But she would stand in the doorway of the cell house and say, "Kitty, kitty, kitty," and those cats would go to her.
Welcome, everyone, to Stool, Pigeon Saturday. We have a guest in the studio with us today. Her name is Suzanne. For everyone who's wondering, she's the one who calls me Star.
Hi, Star.
But we love her for it. So I call her Susan. Her name is pronounced Suzanne. So make sure you get that right when you come in and see her.
Great.
So, Suzanne, what have you got for us today?
Well, I decided to talk to you today about one of our former inmates by the name of Henry Meeks. Oh. And the reason I chose that was because after several tours, I've had people from back east say, "Wow, this place is really like the Wild West. Do you have any, famous inmates?" And so I'm going to talk to you about one of our famous Wild West inmates, Bob Meeks. Actually, it's Henry Meeks, a.k.a. Bob or Bud Meeks.
Bud.
Inmate number 574. And he was actually a member of the Butch Cassidy gang. So that was kind of a big deal back here in the West in the 1800s. So Bob's story starts in August of 1896 when he walked into a bank in Montpelier, Idaho, which is on the border near Wyoming, Wyoming-Idaho border. And he walked in with two other men into this bank in broad daylight, and they walked up to the teller and asked for the money, and they rode away with $7,000. Wow, back then that's a lot of money, right?
1996,
yes.
$7,000.
Yeah,
that was big bucks.
No small change.
Right.
Wow.
So it was kind of lunchtime, so it took him a while for the bankers to get, oh my gosh, we got to get some help here. And these guys, meanwhile, have ridden off to the west, and they finally get some people around to help hunt them down, and they can't find them. So needless to say, they left with this money for about 10 months. Wow. And then in June of 1897, Bob is captured. Only Bob, no other members of the gang or no other members that helped him with this bank robbery. Mm-hmm. And he is tried and convicted and sentenced to 35 years in jail for that bank robbery. He's 28 years old.
Okay.
So this is June 1897, and he arrives in September here out at the old penitentiary. So he is here for about 4 years, and kind of, I guess you could say, a model prisoner. Everybody liked him. He was pretty well behaved. And then for whatever reason, in 1901, his sentence was commuted to 12 years. So cut that in third, about a third, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And one of the men who was actually a cashier at the bank at that time was interviewed at this hearing. He just felt that Bob Meeks was not one of the men who robbed the bank. And Meeks continued then, obviously, to that date, proclaim his innocence. But he still remained incarcerated. Okay? So then, that's August of 1901. And in December of that same year, he is kind of a semi-trustee, which means that he was given, probably a few more privileges than other inmates, maybe not watched over as closely. Well, he's working outside the prison walls, doing some repairs to the hog house. And he's out there with some other guys, and in a flash moment, he decides he unhitches one of the horses, and he takes off and tries to escape from the old Idaho penitentiary. Mm-hmm. So this is December 25th, all right, 1901.
Christmas
and the
Day.
horse, Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
It was his
Christmas
present,
escape.
It was his present to himself, yes. So he heads on that horse north towards Idaho City. And it takes a while for the other inmates to kind of, oh my gosh, look what happened, and for the guards to react. Yeah. And finally, about 20 minutes later, two guards Donnelly and Fulton, are pursuing him. Mm-hmm. But, he's got a pretty good head start by this time. Mm-hmm. And they're following his tracks. It's a snowy day. And it gets late at night, and they haven't found him yet. So the 2 guards head back to pick up the trail the next morning. And sometime during that time, he had actually gone to a mining camp, gotten some food and some clothing. So he had made a fire for the night and was kind of settled in, thinking maybe this is my great escape. But sure enough, the next morning, the 2 guards are back on his tracks, and they see some smoke off in the distance. And this is up towards Idaho City, Moores Creek area. And they see a little smoke from the fire, and they recognize that horse, Selam. Selam was the favorite horse, I believe, here at the old pen. Good workhorse. And so they recognize that, see the fire, and sure enough, there he is, snoozing by the fire. And he wakes up, and he pretty much gives himself up. He's like, you know what, we're good, go ahead and take me back. And that's exactly what they did. But a little side note here about Meeks is that he was born to a good Mormon family in Utah.
All right.
And yes, he grew up in Venerable, Utah. But after leaving home, he just kind of fell in with the wrong gang. And that was this Butch Cassidy gang.
Right.
Well, and Butch Cassidy, they filmed that film near, I think, Venable, actually. I've been to it's like an old ghost town, actually.
Neat.
So anyway, sorry, that's an extra side note.
A little side note there.
Robert
about,
Redford.
Yeah, yay, Robert. Okay. All right. So anyway, when he was brought back, Warden Arnie was very thankful that he was returned, and he is quoted as saying, "I am glad Meeks has been recaptured for the effect it will have on the other prisoners. I am equally glad that we have Selam back, the horse. He's a noble animal, and it would be a pity to have that horse knocking around among those who would not appreciate his worth." So great quote, right?
Yeah.
Idaho
No one
statesman.
ever escapes on Selam ever again, right?
Oh, not true. Not true. Side note again. So this, Bob takes off on Christmas Day. In January, shortly after, another inmate by the name of Sam Bruner, he is also a trustee working outside the walls. He hops on Selam and he tries to make his escape. And you know what? He was successful, though. He headed south towards Owyhee County, and they did not ever find Sam again. But the horse was, again, one of their top priorities. And about 6 months later, they found Selam roaming around near Swan Falls on the Snake River there.
So were they still, like, they kind of gave up on Sam, but they still wanted, like, were people from the prison still out, or was it that, like, they put out basically an APB for this horse?
Yes, pretty much an APB, both for Sam and the horse. Sam never is, located again, but I'll be darned if Selam isn't just kind of hanging out in the sagebrush, and they bring Selam back, and they have their trusty horse. So honestly, they probably wanted the horse more than they wanted Sam. And thankfully, they were able to do that, so everybody's happy now. So back to Bob Meeks. So he's back at the penitentiary after that first escape on Selam, and he's there for about a year. And in February, he tries to escape again. So this time, as a trustee, I don't think maybe he had that trustee status back. I'm not sure, but he runs through the gate and he's headed to the hills. But this time, not so successfully. He's stopped by a bullet in the leg. Oof. Yeah, they got him, and his leg had to be amputated above the knee. Whoa. So Bob is in a little bit of a pickle here, Probably escaping is not going to be in his future. So in March, though, of that year, that was in February. In March, as he's healing and getting back to regular things, he is climbing up on one of the buildings, one of the new territorial cell house. He's going to watch some of the guys playing some kind of a ball game or something. So he and his crutch, they hobble up to the top of the building, and they're watching these guys playing ball. And it's time to kind of come down, get everybody back in their cells, and one of the guards yells for him, "Hey, Bob, come on, let's go." Bring a ladder over so the guard can climb up and maybe help him down a little bit. And he is resisting, and he shinnies up a trestle towards the wall, and he's up on the wall, and the guard's like, "Bob, come on, you need to get down here." So he's screaming, and he dives down 30 feet to the ground below.
Wow.
Goodness.
Whoa is right, yeah.
Oh.
So he's laying there, feigns unconsciousness, but he's responding to little pinpricks, all over his body. The physician is trying to, decide really what's wrong with him. And really nothing is wrong with him. No back bones are broken, and his spine may have been injured. So
What?
Take him to the hospital, let him kind of hang out there, see what, help him recover a little bit. And as he's lying in the hospital, he's saying, gosh, my clothes are too tight. My back hurts. Can you take these clothes off me? So there's a couple of guards in there. And they decide they have to cut his clothing off because they can't move him around enough probably to remove the clothing. And as they are working the scissors and they lay the scissors down to help remove the clothing, he looks over at the scissors and he's got this look in his eye and he grabs that scissors, I'm sure, and he opens it up and he faces the scissors towards his heart like he's going to commit suicide.
Jeez.
And both the guards are like, oh my gosh. So they make eye contact and one of them notices a blanket laying on a bed. He grabs a blanket, throws it over Meeks, and the scissors is taken away from him. Wow. So he has escaped yet again another kind of a suicide attempt, right? To jumping off the wall and now using a pair of scissors.
Well, and I think it's absolutely crazy that he dives off of a 30, he's just basically a 30-foot fall, 30-foot dive, and he doesn't have any major injuries.
Right.
Like feigning being unconscious is fine, but how does he not have any injuries?
I don't
That's
know.
crazy.
And he's like early 30s, right?
28 years old when he was
28
brought
when he
in. So
brought
this is
in.
about 5 years later. So he's in his early 30s, So, but I mean, he doesn't have a leg, but he's probably maybe still, strong torso,
and this
arms.
is a month after his leg is amputated.
Yes.
And he falls off a building.
And he's kind of okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Right. And so he was angry that they had thwarted this attempt at suicide. And he is quoted as saying that he would yet accomplish his purpose of making away with himself. So he's got that in his mind.
Yeah.
This is late 1903. And his mother decides that she's going to come and visit him. So she does. And he's on suicide watch here. He's being watched constantly by guards and other inmates. And then April 22nd in 1903, a judge does declare him insane, and he is committed to the insane asylum in Blackfoot, Idaho. Wow.
Okay.
So he had stated that he is afflicted with suicidal mania and otherwise out of mental balance. So I think that says it all, right? Yeah. All right. So he is moved to Blackfoot. He's committed to the asylum, and 2 of his former gang members visit him in the asylum. Right. And this was 19 days before he makes an escape attempt. So his mother was quoted as saying to another woman after she left his visit that he would get out of here some way, somehow. So we don't know if the 2 guys helped him in any way, shape, or form. But it is said that he either dug out or jumped out of the second story of one of the buildings. Jumped again, right? Wow. Second story. Jeez. Maybe he didn't really jump. Maybe he could shinny down, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not land so hard. So either way, there's no clear evidence on how he made that escape. But he did get on a horse. And it is also noted in another Statesman article that he rode that horse over 500 miles.
Whoa.
So they think that he had at that time probably hurt his shoulder pretty bad from his escape attempt. Plus he only has one leg. Plus one good leg, right? Plus he's maybe not right in the mind, but he does make this attempt and is not recaptured.
Wow.
There was one statement that he was located on his brother's ranch in Fort Bridger, which is south of Evanston, Wyoming. They said he was just a physical wreck and maybe obviously a mental wreck as well, right? But there was no attempt made to bring him back to the Idaho State Penitentiary to serve any of his time. And one source says that he was recaptured and returned, but we don't have evidence of that here. And another source states that he eked out a meager life cleaning a saloon, and on January 19th, 1911, he committed suicide. And it was said that he was buried in an unmarked grave near Fort Bridger, Wyoming.
Wow.
So what a life, right?
Yeah, good work, Suzanne.
Wow, what a life.
I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but do you wonder if he maybe faked mental illness so that he could be sent to Blackfoot, which is an easier place to escape from than the walls?
Pretty common.
Yeah.
Situation.
Do you know if there was any suspicion of that?
I don't know if he just, he
okay.
had 4 escape attempts and 2 suicide attempts. So maybe with the 2 escape attempts not working, maybe the suicide attempts were what he resorted to in order to get out of the penitentiary itself and in maybe a less structured, environment so that he could make that escape attempt.
Yeah. But I do wonder, though, if he did eventually commit suicide, if it maybe was a little bit of both. Maybe it was a plan to get somewhere that is a little less secure, but also if he was truly fighting those thoughts, if he did eventually complete suicide.
Well, if one of the accounts is correct, then yeah, he did.
Yeah.
You know, and that wasn't much later. That was in 1911, and his escape from the asylum was, 1903? So, you know, that's 8 years of kind of maybe good years, maybe not so good, if he was eking out, you know, a meager existence
Right.
cleaning a saloon. So maybe that's just what ends up happening when you just don't have a direction in your life, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you are in this life of crime and you're part of a gang and now you have no leg, you're not going to be an active member in
Of
these
the gang.
robberies and having, so
Right.
I think he saw this weight of 12 years in prison and kind of being destitute to, you're not going to be out in the fields working, you're going to be sitting in your cell all day or doing really meager work. So,
Right.
I mean, I could see how depression would set in just
Sure.
naturally with his situation.
Right, you're not going to get that high of robbing again. or,
Yeah.
you know, the trains and the banks like they did so well because they can't take you along. You're a liability now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Interesting.
I know.
What?
It was
sad.
it's kind of a sad story, isn't it? Very sad story.
I did a little inflation count on that $7,000, and this is the inflation calculator I'm looking at. Looks at 1913 onwards. So,
And that's the one I used, by the way, for last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so in 1913, $7,000 would be $181,000. So we're
Wow.
probably looking at close to
Yeah.
200,000.
Well, in
Right.
Montpelier, that's probably literally half the town's savings.
Right.
Like, that's
Oh, don't you think it would be at that?
gone down the drain, stolen by Butch Cassidy and his gang.
Right.
Oh, that would
Probably
like,
the whole
put,
town's-
Yeah, put the town destitute
Yeah.
almost. Oh, that
Everybody's
would be
trusting you with your money, and then all of a sudden it's gone.
And were there any shots fired or anything like that? in
There was
this?
no, I didn't see any indication that they had any shots fired. They
So
rode
they-
off.
Yeah, so they walked in the bank,
Yeah.
said, "Give us your money," took $181,000 and just rode off before anyone could get to
Right.
the sheriff. I mean, it's smart of them to take advantage of small towns because there's one sheriff and he's probably asleep.
Yeah.
You know, what else are you doing
Well,
out
he was
there?
at lunch. This was
Yeah,
lunchtime.
oh, exactly.
So everybody's
Yeah,
at
so they gotta-
lunch. And,
Yeah.
Do you think they split it three ways, or did they take it back to their
Oh,
camp?
I think they
with
took
the
it
rest
back
of
to the gang, and
Yeah.
as they were, hoarding all of their, winnings and whatnot,
Yeah.
because they had done some pretty substantial train robberies, $21,000 train robbery. I don't know how close it was to this one, but whoa, baby.
Yeah.
I wonder if Bob gave any of it to his family, like to his mom, and maybe supported her in that way.
Well, I don't know. It sounded like she was fairly when the other convicts here at the penitentiary found out that she was coming to visit. She had written a letter that said she was going to have to sell some of her cattle in order to come. They actually raised some money and helped her come and visit him. So probably he had not helped her with any of those winnings that he had made.
Yeah, and so I wonder if the gang kind of turned their back on him when he was
Yeah.
incarcerated, except for later visiting.
Right.
Yeah, that's
But
hard.
I mean, I wonder if it was literally just like a loyalty to a friend. Like, I wonder if they made the three of them, for whatever reason, were good friends, and it was less of a gang related visit than just like a couple friends being like, "Hey, we could probably help you get out."
Right.
Yeah.
Now, him being from a Mormon family, do you know if it was a fairly large family?
I don't.
Okay.
Don't know what his family situation was, but he wasn't following their ways for sure. He had left and taken a life of crime. Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't into the polygamy apparently, which is fine. That's
Yeah,
good.
we don't
It's a
know
good thing.
no information on whether he ever had a wife, had any children. Just his
Well, he would have been in his mid 30s when he,
right.
or late 30s when he died. So
Yes. Here in 1911 was supposedly when he died
Yeah.
and committed suicide.
yeah.
So anyway, just a crazy life in the Wild West, right?
Yeah,
Bob Meeks,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, Suzanne.
And thanks for
Right.
weaving in Selam as well. You can buy a Selam plush at our gift shop
Yes,
if
you
you
Right.
have little ones who are interested in horses or stuffed animals or Selam's story. So
I remember trying to figure out, because Selam, the guards talk about him as being this amazing racehorse and all this stuff, but by this time it seemed like he was just kind of an old
Nag.
Nag. Yeah. I actually found
Right.
where he was winning all these racing competitions locally here in the Ada
Wow.
County, and I mean, when he was purchased by the prison, I think he was like 12 or 13 years old. He was kind of an older
Wow, no kidding.
older horse. So to travel as far as he
Yeah.
did on these escaped convicts is absurd.
Well, and one of the articles in the Idaho Statesman. Thank goodness for the Idaho Statesman, right? That is
Absolutely.
our resource for so much of this information. But they did say that he had some of the big harnesses on because he was harnessed to a wagon. And once Bob had gone a certain amount of time, he actually cut the harnesses off because it was weighing on the horse. And so it was kind of a sign of compassion that he was trying to save the horse. There's signs that he maybe walked for a while and let the horse rest. So yes, he was probably old and not, totally going to be able to do the job, but he was hopeful that he was going to get away on this horse. And Sam must have been doing something right too.
Yeah.
When he got away on Selam.
Well, and I do wonder how much respect they did have for these animals. I mean, as far as we can tell, most of the animal stories we have, they're all pretty beloved out here.
Right.
It's something different from the mundane. Is you get to have this horse, and you also want to treat the horse you're getting away on well, because if you don't, you're far more likely to get captured, I would think.
Sure.
So you definitely want to. But I do wonder, if there was a pretty healthy respect for the animals, because the animals didn't lock them up. The animals weren't doing anything,
Right.
To them. They were there as a
It's like
companion
having a
as
pet.
well. Yeah,
Exactly.
Like having a pet that you love that brings out all the good qualities in you.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so
Someone who's going to nuzzle you and kindly and gently,
Yeah.
with your
Right.
permission and
Right.
with love and compassion. That's
Right.
like a cat. Like we'll talk about Dennis in another future episode. Dennis the cat that served 16 years out here.
Right.
So beloved.
And there's also a
All
little
animals
plush
that way.
Dennis too.
Dennis.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've seen in current corrections, and you can talk about this a
Right.
little bit, the program where inmates basically raise dogs, these kenneled dogs, and they train them up and require folks adopting them to fill out these really strenuous forms about how you're going to raise this animal once they're released from prison, basically.
They are,
and,
right,
brought
yes.
to a family. And
It's a great program with the Correctional Facility and the Idaho Humane Society.
Yeah, that's
and it's just really neat.
Very
So
cool.
animals are important in our lives, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And always have been, I think, as this story and many of our other stories prove.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Susan.
Yeah.
You're
You did
welcome,
great.
Star. Great to be here, Anthony.
And I did forget to mention that Suzanne is our educational specialist out here at the Old Idaho Penitentiary. She's excellent, obviously, as you can tell, at what she does. And she gives a lot of tours when the fourth graders come in and is very patient with them and does a great job. And we're very thankful to have Suzanne out here, even when she calls me Star.
Okay, thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Suzanne.
All right. See ya. Oh, do your own time.
Do your crime.
Sure. Do your do your own number as well.
Do your number?
Yeah, do your crime, do your own time, do your own number.
Do your own time.
I don't know that one.
You've been listening to the podcast.
But I didn't
It's in-
remember that.
Listen to the
Somebody will
podcast
probably
enough.
get it. I just didn't get it.
We like it.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, that's great, you guys. That was super fun.
If you enjoyed Behind Gray Walls, please rate, review, and subscribe so others can find our podcast. If you're interested in more Old Idaho Penitentiary information and to see mugshots of the inmates featured in this episode, follow the Old Idaho Penitentiary on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to learn more about the Idaho State Historical Society and its other sites, follow ID State Historical Society on Instagram or visit history.idaho.gov. If you have a question or comment for the hosts, please email us at behindgraywalls@gmail.com.